When police charge someone with murder, their job is to explain what happened that day. But in this case, the charging document talks about choking, threats, and sexual coercion from long before the shootings. So why would that be inside a homicide affidavit? Because this document isn't telling a story. It's making an argument. And once you understand why a detail is included, you start to see what investigators think was happening, even before a trial ever begins. Hi, everyone, and welcome to the first video under the new name, Motive and Method. Same approach, just a clearer label. My background is in communication and behavioral pattern analysis. I'm not diagnosing anyone, and I'm not predicting outcomes. In this first part of the series, I'm just explaining what investigators chose to document and what that usually signals. This part 1 is short and just covers the foundation, what the affidavit says, and why those details are there at all. According to the probable cause affidavit, on December 30th, 2025, police were sent to a home on North 4th Street in Columbus for a welfare check. Inside, they found Monique and Spencer Tepe, a married couple, deceased from gunshot wounds. The document places the time frame overnight between late December 29th and the morning of the 30th, using phone activity and other evidence. It also mentions surveillance and vehicle identification, linking a suspect to the scene. Up to here, this reads like a normal charging document. Then it changes direction. So, instead of staying focused on the crime scene, investigators begin describing the prior relationship between the suspect and Monique. Witnesses reported she had previously disclosed choking, physical abuse, forced sexual behavior, threats, and alleged statements from Michael McKee suggesting she would always remain his wife. And this is where people get confused, because none of that proves a shooting happened. So again, why include it? Charging documents don't include everything. They include what investigators believe establishes risk, escalation, or behavioral patterns. Courts aren't looking only at a moment. They're looking at the relationship leading up to the moment. So prior conduct in this affidavit may appear not as proof of the crime, but as context for how investigators interpret later actions. The document is showing the court how they are categorizing the situation. You'll notice the affidavit specifically mentions choking. I want to pause here on this because this is a very important piece of the puzzle, if you will. Investigators treat any allegations of non-fatal choking differently from many other forms of violence. In violence risk research, strangulation is considered a major escalation marker. It changes how a relationship is classified, from conflict to potential lethality risk. In other words, when a man attempts strangulation on his partner, there is a strong likelihood, significantly increased likelihood that it will escalate. It won't ever go back to the way it was before. It'll escalate from there up to and including murder, unfortunately. That doesn't determine guilt in this case, the fact that he may have allegedly tried to strangle Monique. But it explains why that allegation appears in a murder affidavit instead of being left out. The document is signaling the type of pattern investigators believe they may be dealing with. So this episode isn't about deciding what happened. It's explaining how to read the document. Police reports are narratives. They're structural arguments. And when you understand why a detail is included, you understand what investigators think matters before any testimony ever begins. So, in the next episode, we'll look at what these details usually point to: escalation, permanence language, and threats, and why statements can matter even if they were never carried out. Because the affidavit isn't just recording events, it is describing progression. Before you go, think back to the details that stood out to you. Which ones felt important, and which ones felt like they shaped how you interpreted the situation? I'll be reading your observations before we continue. See you next time.